You wanna play rough? Okay. Uno. Say hello to my little friend! Okay. You wanna play rough? Okay. God. Okay, you like that? Huh? You want more?
Hey everyone, it's Jim and it's time for another in-depth discussion and analysis, and it's on another gangster movie. It's just where I go off and talk about the themes and ideas and everything about a movie that I want to talk about kind of just in depth. So it's going to be Scarface from 1983, which I recently rewatched, and you forget movies like this, and it's a shame that you do because you take them for granted. This is an absolutely unbelievable film. It really is. Brian De Palma is such a fantastic director. He's got so many brilliant films to his name: Blowout, Dressed to Kill, Carlito's Way, with Pacino as well, which is just wonderful. But I think this is the pinnacle. Obviously you got Carrie as well. What a director he is. This is the pinnacle though for me of Brian De Palma. This is almost the pinnacle. I don't know what I prefer. There's so many gangster movies I really, really love. Goodfellas, Once More Time in America, Donnie Brasco. It's they're all kind of up in the upper echelon. It'd be so difficult to rank them, but Scarface is just an absolute masterpiece. It really, really is. It tells the story of Tony Montana, played by Al Pacino, who arrives in 1980s Miami. He is a Cuban refugee, and obviously he arrives penniless and goes on to become a powerful drug lord. I think the Pacino performance is where you should start. You can't really get past the performance. It's one of the greatest performances of all time. It's one of the most memorable performances of all time. It's so authentic. It's so savage. It's such a performance full of spite and entitlement. I really, really think that this could be done more. I know they did it with Joker, but even then, it was really pushed with a sympathy. Could you do this today? Could you make a film about a bad person? I know Tom Hardy did Capone, which I haven't seen, so I guess that's it. But we just don't see it as much, and it's brave, it's ambitious filmmaking, and it gives you a different take on the world to not always have a truly likeable character in the lead. It gives this kind of dimension of looking at another side of the world that we maybe hide from if we're always going to see something good. Always. Al Pacino as Tony Montana, it's as close to believing a character exists as you can get. This is Al Pacino's best performance, and that's saying a lot, because Al Pacino is one of the greatest actors of all time. I love Al Pacino, but there are performances that you can kind of see similarities to. There's nothing like Tony Montana in his catalogue. I mean, he puts his life and soul into this performance. It is an intense performance. There's no effort to compromise the character, as I said. There are moments of sympathy for Tony, but they don't try and do it that much at all. And he's got an inferiority complex. It's a film about that. It's a film about entitlement. It's a film about ego. It's a film about living in your ego, which Tony does. He is obsessed with success. And it is a film all about the kind of success myth, where it doesn't really equal happiness. You go through life with the blinders on, trying to achieve, and you get there and it's, hang on, what am I really doing? I'm not even happier. In this film, there's a rise of capitalism whilst Tony's doing his stuff on the side, and there's a discussion of Tony basically says, I do all my crime, but I don't hide who I am. Whereas the crime that goes on in capitalism, the corruption that goes on, is like these people go through life and just lie to the public. They pretend to be somewhere else. They hide their shady deals. And it's an interesting idea, because if crime is going on, if corruption is going on, why do we accept the people who do it behind closed doors and in a cushy way? They're just as bad as Tony, really. And that's an interesting discussion here. There's a presentation of the world as this corrupt place in Scarface. Everyone is doing shady deals. Everyone is pretty much a bad person in this film, really. It's a film about grabbing at success. Everyone's in their own delusion in Scarface. These are self-destructive people, and I've just really noticed a trend when I watch gangster films. All the characters are self-destructive because they're just obsessed. They just can't deal with living a regular life. But they eventually realise that they would have been happier doing that. And they just become this kind of, not even a person, just this walking desire for success. That's what Tony becomes, and he realises it doesn't satisfy. He doesn't understand why it doesn't satisfy. And it's such an interesting film, because it's like, what made him like this? Was it entitlement because he's come over to, as a Cuban refugee? Is it society not giving him opportunities? Is it he's just a bad seed naturally? Is it just being overcome with ego? Because he's just so arrogant. He's unbelievably arrogant. He's unbelievably hungry for success. He's unbelievably immoral, and we never really get that. We get what things that it could have been. He's done time, and he's, it's such a difficult time period as well. And it's interesting to think what things can make of people, what experiences can make of people. Do the experiences make the person? Who is the real Tony Montana? But eventually, you have to strip all that away, and Tony has to take full responsibility, because he goes so far with it becomes his responsibility. I've always found it fascinating in these films. I wonder how much, and in life, when people make these mistakes, when people go down these paths of autopilot, focus on success or gain or corruption or whatever it is, there is a point, I would say, where they're not as responsible. Ultimately, they're responsible for their actions, but when they go into this kind of state, and it's kind of a trance, at what point do they become responsible, is an interesting one for me. It's a very interesting idea, because they're essentially living on autopilot, and Tony is living on autopilot in this film. Tony's relationship with Gina, his sister Gina, she's the only good thing in his life. There's moments of sympathy for Tony where he is nice to his sister, but it's the only way he knows how, buying her things, trying to control her. He doesn't want her in the clubs he's at. He doesn't want her to live the life he lives. It's such an interesting idea with these gangsters in these films, when they protect this one thing of purity. It's like she represents he knows essentially he's bad, but she represents something good, so he has to keep that pure. He gets obsessed with it. It's like a kind of like a shining diamond of something left that's good. There's also a sympathetic scene where Tony doesn't want to kill this guy by car bomb when his wife and kids are in the car, and he's really resistant to it, and it's a very powerful moment of humanity. It's a very affecting one. It really does make you go, hang on, this guy, he has got something left in there. But then the next scene, he kills his best friend. He just can't, he can't come back, from how far he's gone. He'll have these little moments, but it's like he essentially is bad. This character is jarring, so unpredictable, the character, so out of control. Obviously we have Michelle Pfeiffer as Tony's wife in this film, and it's such a memorable performance. Everyone remembers Michelle Pfeiffer in Scarface. What a charismatic actress when you first see her, what a beautiful actress back here, what a wonderful performance it is. But women in this film are trinkets, they are prizes, they are kind of little, like Gina, just a purity symbol, not people of their own. They're not allowed to be people of their own. Tony doesn't allow Gina her own life. He controls his wife, and his wife is already done. Like, you meet Michelle Pfeiffer in this, as soon as you meet her, she's already done with this lifestyle, but she's so far into it, she's just a junkie. This lifestyle strips you of your humanity. It strips you of your worth. And it's always comes from a place of, maybe I don't want to work a regular job, so I'll just go down this path because this will give me it. And it just ends up leaving you so lonely, so broken, so lacking in human connection. None of these characters can connect with each other. None of these characters can get through. It's almost like there's just an invisible wall between all these characters, and it's called ego. There's a moment where Tony just unleashes on his wife when he says that she's become so much of a junkie he can't have a child with her, and that just hits you hard. That's devastating. The lack of care in Tony's voice, the menace in his voice when he's saying that, man, and Michelle Pfeiffer's reaction, just, it breaks her. You know, and it breaks you as the viewer, because it's like, wow, these people are so far gone. You know, they think they're above, they think that they've achieved, but they're essentially helpless, they're essentially losers. You know, in the moment where Michelle Pfeiffer says, we've got all this, but we're not winners, we're losers. Staggering discussion, very uncompromising, very raw and intense discussion, very nihilistic film. Very nihilistic film, you know, but again, dressed up in the coolness of Brian De Palma. You know, the music of the time period, the disco, the club scene, the clothes, the cars, everything's really convincing, and it's one of the most convincing depictions of that time period ever, I would say. It feels so authentic. It feels so street level and believable. Brian De Palma, one of the finest directors, he's the king of tension. There's plenty of meticulously built scenes. You know, for example, where Tony is ambushed in the club. Tony has had a bad night, he's just sitting there getting drunk, and these two guys are sitting there. There's music, there's entertainment, and De Palma will cut back between Tony and these guys and the entertainment. And slowly but surely you realise there's something about these guys, that they're just sitting there staring at Tony menacingly. And it's so slow paced. You know, and it's constant back and forth. Zooms on Tony's face as Tony's slowly realising. Zooms on their hands under the table as they're getting out their guns. Meanwhile, we have the music, we have the club. You know, the direction is absorbing. You know, and then these guys just rise up and start shooting at Tony. You know, it's a short moment of build-up, but it's wonderful. You know, it's so well constructed. You know, so well constructed. And then when Tony confronts his boss, one of my favourite scenes in the film, it's edge of the seat. It's meticulous. Not a shot is wasted. In that scene, the way that De Palma shoots Tony starts off by shooting him normally on the same level as his boss, and then slowly but surely in the scene, we start looking up at Tony with the camera, and he becomes more dominant in the scene. De Palma brings in more authority in the scene, and eventually as he takes over from his boss is on his knees in front of him. It's expertly built up, and it's the rise of Tony. It's so memorable. And then after this scene there's operatic music, and we see a plane with the words spelled out on it, "The world is yours." Wonderful establishment of Tony's rise. So epic. It feels like such a culmination to the first half of the film. And then after that scene, what I talked about, we get a montage of Tony becoming the man, and we get a song, "Pushing to the Limit." And it's not usual for De Palma to have a montage, but it was good to see him engaging in an 80s trope. So while this film is so De Palma, it's also De Palma dipped in to this gangster attitude, this vibe, this world of charisma, this world of fast-moving charm and excess, more. I love that montage. You know, you don't expect it in a film like this, but it really fits in because, you know, even though it is an epic, serious film, it has room for a kind of fun montage. You know, it was becoming very popular at the 80s, that sort of thing. Much like Scorsese, much like directors like Sergio Leone as well, De Palma is great at depicting time going by, but not having things feel drawn out. You really feel like you've seen Tony start from the bottom and just go all the way, you know, to the top of the drug world. We pretty much see all of that. So you really feel like you've been on the journey with Tony. You really feel the stakes. I must mention Steven Bauer as Manny Ray, who is Tony's best friend in this, which is a great performance. You know, it's not much to say about it, but it really is a performance of such conviction, and he really feels like a man of the time. He really feels like this young, swagger-filled, you know, skirt-chasing guy, and it's a performance of great personality, great chemistry with Al Pacino, great believability, great likability. You know, he's probably the most likeable character in the film. You know, everyone else is pretty darn unlikable. I suppose Gina is very likeable, but you know, he's the one involved in the gangster world who has some humanity to him, who kind of is along for the ride but never really goes as far as Tony into drugs and this and that. So he's kind of Tony's best friend, but Tony takes him for granted. Obviously in this film there's the monumental ending scene where it's all crashing down around Tony and he's under attack, the shootout in the Red Mansion. What a visually striking scene, one of the most memorable, you know, that moment of say hello to my little friend, just, you know, much like when he shot the gun, Al Pacino shot himself into film history forever. So unbelievably well done by, obviously, Pacino, obviously by De Palma. It's one of the best shootouts at the end in film history, you know, and you're on the knife edge of Al Pacino's performance because he still holds on to that ego to the very end. To the very end, he holds on to that ego. A character who refused to change, a character who refused to go on any journey of morals or perspective. He just refused to. He was a bad person. Brian De Palma's best film, in my opinion, is an absolute masterpiece. Every scene, you know, it's nearly 3 hours to film, nothing is wasted, nothing should be taken out of this. It's one of the most films that's so long where everything is earned. Everything is earned. You know, what a film it is. What do you guys think of Scarface? Let me know in the comments below. I'm going to do another in-depth discussion analysis very, very soon. Want to make them much more frequent on this channel. Probably do it about another gangster film, maybe De Palma's Carlito's Way. Please subscribe to this channel if you like my content. If you like this, click on the screen now, there'll be another discussion video on there. So there's not much more I can say other than say goodnight to the bad guy.